At 6 o'clock on a Tuesday evening, I opened my front door and saw 3 uniformed police officers standing on my porch. Not because of a break-in, not because of a noise complaint, but because my neighbor Karen had called them over my Wi-Fi password. That was the moment I realized my quiet suburban life had been hijacked by the most entitled, power-hungry woman I had ever met, and I had no idea just how far she was willing to take it. I live in a small cul-de-sac, the kind of neighborhood where everyone waves when you drive by, kids ride bikes until dark, and the biggest drama is whose dog left paw prints on the sidewalk. I work from home, so a fast, reliable internet connection isn't just convenient, it's essential. For years, things were peaceful until Karen moved in next door. She was loud, bossy, always armed with some HOA rule she claimed gave her authority. I brushed it off at first. Every neighborhood has a Karen right, but when those officers asked me if I had changed my Wi-Fi password recently, I knew this was different. I told them yes, I had. They asked why. I asked if that was actually a crime. They looked embarrassed, muttered that it wasn't, but Karen was behind them with her arms crossed and that sharp, paint-stripping voice declaring that I had cut off her essential utilities. According to her, my personal internet connection had magically become public property just because she could see the signal bar from her kitchen. I wanted to laugh, but sarcasm has always been my armor, so instead I leaned on the doorframe and said, "Unless Comcast merged with the HOA, I don't think my bill covers her Netflix binge." One of the younger cops snorted, tried to hide it while Karen glared like she could curdle milk with her eyes. She demanded they arrest me for theft of service, conveniently ignoring the fact that she had been stealing my bandwidth for months. When the cops finally left, Karen promised she'd elevate this to the county level. That should have been the end. But, of course, it wasn't. Later that night, I checked my router logs and froze. Among the freeloading devices I'd blocked was one labeled HEM Hub. Tracing it back, I realized Karen had connected her security cameras to my Wi-Fi cameras pointed straight at my yard. She hadn't just been stealing internet, she had been spying on me. Every time she mentioned my lawn schedule or mysteriously knew when I had guests, it all made sense. The next morning, I woke up to a notice taped to my door, declaring that all residents were required to give their Wi-Fi passwords to the HOA for community integration. At the bottom was Karen's signature under a self-appointed title, Technology Chairwoman. No one had voted on that. She just invented it. I called Bob, the real HOA president, a mild-mannered accountant who hated conflict. He sighed and admitted Karen had been pushing this idea for months. He promised to handle it, which I knew meant he'd file it under paperwork and hope it disappeared. But Karen wasn't about to let it disappear. That afternoon, she stormed onto my porch, waving her fake notice like it was royal decree. "You have 24 hours to comply," she barked. I asked. "Or what?" she smirked. "Fines daily, maybe even a lien on your house." She said it so confidently that anyone less stubborn might have believed her. I called Bob on speaker, asked him point-blank if the HOA required Wi-Fi sharing. His voice came through absolutely not. "That's ridiculous." Karen's face turned crimson before she stormed off. I thought maybe that public embarrassment would shut her down. I was wrong. That night, my internet went dead. When I called my provider, they said someone had filed a transfer of service request trying to switch my account into another name. The name on that request, Karen Wilkinson. She had tried to steal my account. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about freeloading anymore. This was war. Over the next few days, Karen escalated at a dizzying pace. She printed more bogus notices. She told neighbors we were moving to community Wi-Fi. She even set up a folding table in the cul-de-sac with a plastic sign reading Technology Support Center, charging people cash for router setups and fake passwords. I took photos, collected flyers, screenshots, everything. But still the damage spread. Some neighbors believed her. Bob tried to stay neutral, and I felt alone. There was one night where I sat in my kitchen staring at the pile of evidence and felt crushed. My internet was unstable. Some neighbors were whispering about me being uncooperative, and the HOA board seemed powerless. For a moment, I honestly thought about giving up, moving away, letting Karen win. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it wasn't worth fighting. But then I remembered the cameras she had pointed at my yard the smug way she said she'd put a lien on my house. That wasn't just annoying, that was dangerous. If I let her steamroll me, she'd steamroll the entire neighborhood. That thought pulled me back from the edge. I wasn't going to let Karen own me. The county investigator I contacted started taking interest after I sent him photos of her support center table. Neighbors like Eleanor, a sharp-tongued widow across the street, began standing up too. She screamed at Karen one afternoon, "Step foot on my porch, and I'll call the sheriff." That small act gave me hope. Maybe I wasn't fighting alone after all. Karen, of course, doubled down. She strung a giant banner across the neighborhood entrance, "Community Wi-Fi, see Technology Chairwoman." She strutted around with sunglasses and a clipboard collecting fees from neighbors. I photographed every handshake, every slip of cash. When the county finally sent an investigator down, he asked Karen for permits, licenses, and board approval. All she had were self-printed flyers. He slapped her with a cease and desist. That should have been the knockout. But Karen wasn't wired to retreat. She called an emergency HOA meeting, and the clubhouse flyers plastered everywhere warning about digital sovereignty under attack. The room was packed. Karen stood at the front with a microphone railing about conspiracies and corporate enslavement. Bob timidly reminded everyone she wasn't authorized to hold meetings, but Karen brushed him aside. She pointed at me, screaming that I was colluding with Comcast and plotting to ruin the neighborhood. For a second, I saw some neighbors hesitate. Her theatrics almost worked. But then Eleanor stood and shouted, "You charged me for a password that didn't even work. You lied to us." The room shifted. Murmurs grew into anger. I laid the county's cease and desist order on the table. Bob read it aloud, and the tide turned. Karen snapped. She screamed that we were blind sheep, that I was the enemy. Then, right on cue, the clubhouse doors swung open. 2 sheriff's deputies stepped in. Karen's face lit up with glee. She pointed at me and shouted, "Arrest him," but the deputies weren't there for me. They looked straight at her. "Karen Wilkinson. We need to speak with you regarding multiple complaints of fraud and impersonation." The silence in the room was electric. Karen sputtered, insisting I was the criminal, but no one bought it. Neighbors demanded refunds. The deputies handed her official papers. Her confident mask shattered. That was the moment. The climax. After months of lies, intimidation, and fake authority, Karen was finally exposed in front of everyone. Her empire of Wi-Fi crumbled in seconds. She wailed about persecution, accused me of manipulating the system, but her words bounced off a wall of disgust. Even her loyalists looked away. The deputies guided her out, not in cuffs yet, but stripped of the control she'd fought so hard to steal. And that's where I stop the story. Because that was the moment the nightmare ended, not with a celebration, not with balloons or a block party, but with the sight of Karen being escorted out powerless at last. The lesson: sometimes you don't need to shout louder than a Karen. You just need patience, evidence, and the courage to stand your ground.